All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started here. So thanks everyone for joining today. We are going to have a lot of material to cover, so I want to dig in and get started. We are lucky enough to be brought these classes by the Washington State Micro Enterprise Association. They approved over 2 million in small grants to 80 different nonprofit organizations. You see some of their logos here on the screen. And that includes our wonderful Pacific Economic Development Council. Our county is lucky enough to have a wonderful team supporting us here, and they offer a number of services to help businesses. They've been very helpful in my exploration of starting a business here on the peninsula. They offer business center services at the Long Beach Welcome Center in downtown Long Beach. They have printing services there and computers available. But they will help you with a lot of different topics that your budding small business might need. If you haven't had a chance to check out their website, I highly recommend taking a look. In addition to small business training and development, they offer a number of other business support services to help you grow your business, maintain your business, hold different events, just like we're able to do today. So we're very thankful to have the Pacific County Economic Development Council. And I am Lynn Westfall. My business and my moniker is the Modem Lisa. I am exploring the world of being the technology mindful artist right now. I've always been an artist that has used technology, but I came to the mindful use of technology in business through kind of a whirlwind of a career in various roles in different industries that culminated in my last corporate role at a company called Highland Software. And I was really excited to start at Highland. I actually was working for another company that developed software, but for the automotive industry. You might be familiar with their parent company, Snap-on Tools, but they were Snap-on Business Solutions. So I developed or worked for the company that developed the parts catalogs for many of the automotive manufacturers like Ford and GM. But then when I was ready to leave Snap-on, I knew I wanted to go to Highland Software and looked at their website, and there just happened to be the role that I was doing at Snap-on at Highland. But I was excited to work at Highland because they created a software suite called OnBase. And this OnBase in its inception stood for one database or one system where you could manage your entire business. You could have all of your documents and your metadata or the non-document data of your business in one system, and you could connect all the disparate systems of your business into one. And through my career, this had been like the silver bullet that everyone was seeking, this wonderful one system that, so you wouldn't have to go from place to place to find things, and things could be interconnected and intuitive. And while I did get to work very hands-on with OnBase and even develop applications that I used in my role at Highland, it was not necessarily, it didn't live up to the hype necessarily. And but the dream never dies. They're still developing and improving their software all the time. The challenge is that business software is exponential. There are giant applications that could run entire businesses from the ground up. And then there are small niche applications that do very individual, unique things that certain businesses find essential, even though they maybe only do one or two things. And all of these systems have different forms of data. They run on different platforms. They're licensed and sold in different ways. So trying to build one platform to interconnect and build and bring all of that together is sort of a pie in the sky dream. But there's a lot to be said for bringing as much together as possible. And we're going to learn today about a lot of wonderful systems that can do that for your business and help to meet as many of your needs as possible. So, today's class, your gateway to digital success, is going to help you understand where you are with your business as it comes to technology and help you find where you want to be and how to get there. And along the way, you're going to hear me say sort of a number of times through the class that you cannot improve what you're not measuring. And this is a common statement throughout the corporate world and business analytics, which we'll learn a little bit about in the class today, are key to helping to measure and track where your business is and where it's going. Now, that doesn't mean that software is the solution to everything here. What I'm also going to explain to you today is that there has to be someone or a team of someone's that is the hub of your technology information and has this overall management of what is your technology stack for your business. And we'll talk about what technology makes up your stack is different for every kind of business, but there are some very common fundamental technologies, and that's where we're going to start today. And you'll find that these classes that we're going to have over the next 3 months, there's two a month now through the end of May, they're kind of going to stack on top of each other. So it's great that you're here to be a part of the first class and the live interaction so that you can continue to build as these courses go. And by the end, my goal is always that everyone has as much knowledge as possible and that I am either automated or I teach my way out of anyone ever needing my skills. But that hasn't happened yet, and we'll find out along the way why. It's always challenging. You have to always be learning. So if you are a solopreneur out there or an entrepreneur with maybe, a few people helping you, even a small business where you have a number of employees, this person may be you that has to be your IT procurement, your technology buyer, and your IT asset management or your technology hub, the person that has the complete understanding of your technology scope. But by the end of the course, you're going to be equipped with knowledge and skills to harness technology to help you do that. So we're going to build out different assessments along the way that are going to help you. We're going to learn about how to build out your communication tool suite through those assessments. We'll talk about financial management software and how that plays and interacts with the rest of your technology stack and how important it can be to utilize different financial technology software in order to help your business grow. And then we're going to talk about implementing and maintaining all of these different technology solutions and what it takes to keep that life cycle well fed. Now, the next slide, I built a poll in Zoom that I wanted you all to be able to take at this point in the class. And for some reason, Zoom is not allowing me to share the poll. So I'm hoping that you'll all participate using your gestures on Zoom or feel free to unmute and answer. But let's talk a little bit about how we keep our lives sort of organized, impacts, our daily lives. So my first question was, do you use a separate email for business than you use for your personal email? So if you use a separate email, raise your hand for me. All right. So I recommend using a separate email for business than for personal. Um, you can still have these in the same view. There are, well, we're getting a couple late attendees here, so I'm going to slow down my pace for just a second and let a couple of new people join us here. So those of you that are just joining, I explained that unfortunately I was not able to share the Zoom poll so that I could actually ask you to answer these questions for me via the poll. But I'm asking if you can to raise your hands along the way as I ask the questions, or feel free to unmute and answer if you'd like. Just keep in mind that the course is being recorded. So thank you all very much. I see a couple hands raised here. And so using a separate email is just a good practice. Like I said, you can have them in a similar view where you're using Outlook to maybe view multiple email addresses in a combined inbox. But if you're responding to business emails with a personal email address, you may run into some issues. Having a business domain, even if you're maybe not running a website for your business, and we'll talk a little more about that, but just for email purposes, it can set you apart from other businesses. It can help you avoid, most of all, getting trapped within people's spam or junk email, because a lot of times Gmail, MSN, Outlook, those are going to get kind of blocked by spam filters because they're not necessarily secured domains, like having, the modemlisa.com. So next question, do you use your personal phone number, your personal phone, to manage your business? So raise your hand if you do use your personal phone. And I have to raise my hand to this one as well. So good and bad points here. I, for a long time with Highland, had two cell phones. I had the business phone and I had the work phone. And you don't necessarily have to do it that way. You can have a business phone number forward to your personal phone. And that's not a very expensive service. Google offers workplace phone numbers for $10 a month. The tricky thing is getting the area code you want. You won't be able to get, I think, 360. Most of the Washington State phone numbers, phone number area codes were taken up. I think I found something in 509. Um, but it's it's a good practice to have a separate business phone number if it's going to be posted on websites, just to kind of create an additional layer of protection. Now, what I also like to talk about in a lot of my classes is that everyone and every business sort of has their own comfort level or risk tolerance when it comes to different secure practices or that separation of personal and business. So at the end of the day, you have to make the decision for what is best for you. But in general, it is safer not to have your personal phone out on the web. um, it's just more likely to be at risk then. And if something does happen, it just means that you have to change your personal phone number. It doesn't necessarily mean you're personally more at risk. So the next question I have is, do you have a business domain like mybusiness.com or like I have themodemlisa.com? And please raise your hand if you do already have your own business domain. So that's a great way for you to set your business apart. It helps people to find you more easily, not because of your domain name. So a lot of people put a lot of stock into what their domain name is. And it is important. You want it to be clear. You don't want it to mean other things that could lead to traffic that you don't desire. But do you have to have um, something that is explicitly your name? Like I have themodemlisa.com because that's sort of how I like it to be said. But I also have modemlisa.com in case somebody says it wrong and that redirects back to the same site. Um, but if it were something where it wasn't necessarily critical for me to have people know what the name of my business was in my domain, I could have say tml.com. Now, short domains are almost always taken, but short domains are also the easiest for people to type in, to remember, to go back to. So you do kind of want to be concise with your domain name. Um, .com is also not something that is necessarily required anymore. It used to be, you kind of had your three primary domain options. You had .com, you had .net, and if you're an organization, you had .org. Nowadays, there's pretty much .everything. .co is very popular because it's shorter. So recent customer, Peninsula Acupuncture. Now, that's a long name to type every time. You might not want to have your customers typing in Peninsula Acupuncture every time. So her website is penacu.co. It's very quick and simple. It won't change the way search engines find you because they're searching based on the metadata of your site and how you're registered with those search engines. It's not based on your domain name. So our next question, do you manage your own business website rather than having someone else do it for you? And feel free to raise your hand if you are that solo champ out there taking care of your own website. So this can be a great money saver if you're technically savvy enough and you want to take it on. It can also be time consuming depending on what your business needs are, especially if you're going to be doing e-commerce. There can be a lot of security requirements to make sure that you're accepting credit card payments the most secure way possible. If you're collecting other data, including using things like Google Analytics to collect traffic data to your site, you have to make sure that you have the correct policies in place on your site so that legally you're protected and so that your visitors understand what data your site is collecting along the way. And like I said, if you're using Google Analytics or other plugins to your site, you might not be the one doing the data collecting. One of your plugins or add-ons or features and functionalities of your site might be. Maybe even the site builder that you use, if you use something like Squarespace or Wix, sometimes they have data collection built into those platforms, but oftentimes they also have built-in policies to help you with that as well. So now this one, unfortunately, without the poll, it's going to be hard to get you to answer by raising just your hands. So I'm going to throw some numbers out there and I'm sorry, I skipped ahead for a second. The volume of email that you deal with each day. So if you feel like you delete over 50 emails a day, raise your hand. I know I delete over 50 emails a day that I do not even read. And that's because so many of us are signed up for things automatically, maybe without even knowing it. Very recently, well, over the past year, after I left Highland Software that I talked about earlier, I did look into the job market and looked into the resources available from both my prior state, Ohio, and the state that I live in now, Washington State, obviously. I looked into their sort of unemployment and where you go to look for jobs through the state mechanisms. So you have to go through a lot of different sign up processes for those. And you think, you're signing up with the state of Washington or state of Ohio, and these are, very official type processes. No, they are being built by third parties, they're being managed by third parties, and they're using and selling your email address along the way. So, just from looking through those platforms and finding out what resources were available for people to find jobs, I fell into a huge dump of spam emails that were coming to me where they were not even necessarily about jobs or benefits or other things, and certainly not targeted towards real jobs. And the whole job market and process leads people to filling out forms on websites constantly. So the amount of junk email that you get just from applying for jobs alone can fill your inbox. And remembering to unsubscribe each time or figure out where it's coming from so you can find out where to block your email address can be extremely time consuming. So if you're dealing with deleting a lot of emails each day, you're not alone, but there are a lot of tools out there that can help us all to tackle and manage these better. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So hopefully the next classes, I will get the polls more interactive so we can have some time to really share our thoughts together on these uh, time consuming processes brought to us by technology. But, business is technology. Now, we kind of live in a unique place on the planet where the focus is not necessarily fast paced business, but that doesn't mean that we can ignore the world around us, and it wouldn't benefit us to either. Technology has seeped its way into every aspect of business, which it can seem like a blessing to have things where they're easily accessible, but also a curse to have to make sure they're going through the right systems so that they are accessible. And while it's easier than ever to reach your customers in a heartbeat with an email, they can also publicly post about your business to millions of people on social media. Even if they have the smallest negative experience, it takes a long time for you to overcome what could be a small comment on social media. So, how well do you know your business? And there are many factors that can play into how well you really know every aspect of your business. Now, if you're like me and you're a solopreneur, you have to know it all because you're the only one doing it. But maybe you have a team of 50 people running on different locations on this peninsula, and they just report to you, and you don't have any kind of hands on work within the business. At some point, either you or someone else that you delegate as your technology hub person has to be able to take a very detailed and agnostic look at your business processes so that you can have that landscape laid out. And it does require you to document these aspects so that you can review them. It's going to be one of those times where I'm reminding you that one of our core principles here is that if you're not measuring, you can't improve. So we're going to talk about how you can own your technology landscape. So every business today has some amount of technology stack. We talked about using email. We talked about, we're here on Zoom, we're using this technology. You're using mobile phones. At minimum, you probably have a voicemail, but you may even be using digital documents or accepting credit card payments, managing software and services for your business, or more likely they're not really being managed, you're just utilizing them. And we'll talk about what the difference is there too. But someone has to own this. And if it's you, you're going to learn about what many corporations are facing today, which is called technology sprawl. And that is that there are so many different tools going on throughout the business that there's almost a new app popping up every day to do something. So if you're running a larger organization, that means that there are individuals out there in the sales force that are like, hey, I need an app to help me organize my day better. And they're picking up their mobile device and they're installing it and paying for it on their corporate credit card. And that's something that in the life of a corporate IT asset management or IT procurement specialist, like I was, we called shadow IT, because it meant that there were departments that were basically kind of spinning up their own application tool set. And they were using, products that met their niche needs when maybe there was another tool that a bigger department was using that met more needs, but not the niche needs. It it owning a technology landscape can be simple as knowing everything that you use on your computer, your phone, and as you're going through your daily life. Or if you're managing teams of people, it can be very complex in understanding what all of the team is using. So, how do you know? Well, you have to know your team. So if it's not just you, or maybe if it is just you, there are resources available to us uniquely on this peninsula through our library that can help you to assess your team's skills or even your own skills if you feel like it. I'm going to show you real quick two platforms available to us from the library system here. And they have our library, I tell you, coming from Cleveland, Ohio, which is, not a big city, but a city. The benefits available through the library system here are amazing. Make sure you are taking advantage of them. First and foremost, the free printing that you get every month, which I utilize for my business purposes, is a huge savings to a business. But you can also get printing assistance through the Pacific County Economic Development Council membership at the Welcome Center in Long Beach if you use up all your free printing from the library. But here on the library's website, under the online resources, they have an online courses section. And one of the resources, I won't go through them all, but one of them is called North Star. And this North Star offers assessments on different computer skills, or as you see here, even social media or understanding career skills in your digital footprint. So you can direct your employees to use these assessments to find out where they are and where they might need to grow. There's also Universal Class, and Universal Class has a huge course library of different, I'll come back out. I was in a specific course. Huge course library of business and personal courses that you can take and you can gain certification with for continuous education credits. And I was just I was showing the accounting class that they have, which is very in depth. And you'll see it has a long sort of class outline here, but then there's also the video lesson here and articles and surveys and assignments along the way. So take advantage of these available resources from the library to help you understand sort of the skills that your team has today and to help them grow because you want to foster that continuous learning culture within your company or and within yourself because you're all here today. So I know that you already probably have continuous learning at heart, but it can be hard when you're running a business to keep time to learn, to put aside that, you know, 30 minutes to an hour every day to grow your skills. But with resources like this available to you, it can be really easy to, make yourself a plan and utilize your time to the best benefit and gain knowledge along the way. And that's going to help you to grow your business. And there are courses there on discovering your processes and workflows as well, but we're going to go over some ways to do that yourself. And I've already sent you some documents that we're going to go through that are going to be parts of your ongoing toolkit that you'll be building as part of this course. So, because reviewing your business processes, like I say here, is not a one-time event. This needs to be something that you integrate into every part of your business as you're going along your daily processes, you're reviewing how they're going, create a feedback mechanism, and we'll talk about that along the way as well. Each aspect of your business is going to have different ways for you to capture, track, and measure the processes. And it could be something that you may have to record to find out, okay, every time I put together this package that I send out to my customers, it goes easier if I put these things in the box first, and then I can fold it in better. And then to capture, am I getting faster with that? How many boxes per hour am I packing? How many customers am I able to service in a month? There's always going to be different nuances to tracking. So you have to discover what you need to track for your business. And while there are a lot of tools out there, and we're we're going to talk a lot about tools today, there are not many one size fits all solutions. But there are many commonalities that we're going to build off of. And the first one is communication. So the first thing I've sent you is a communications audit worksheet. Communication practices audit worksheet, maybe a little wordy there. When I send you out your survey later today, you'll have to let me know if you find the titles of the worksheets to be too wordy. So businesses have many internal and external communications to consider. They represent kind of the core functionality, not only of business, but of life, right? We have to communicate. Communication platforms, they represent the stack of tools used to move, organize, and store information from your customers, your employees, your vendors, and all the other sources. And the more tightly integrated communication tools are with the other tools of the business, such as your online presence or your website, your financial systems, your resource planning systems, your CRM or your HR, The more tightly integrated they are, the more efficient your business is going to be. Use communication methods built into existing platforms that you are already engaged with so that you're avoiding confusion. For example, having systems that automatically text updates as you change schedules or have cancellations can save you time, or if they send out email notifications when you're contributing to documents along the way so that the other contributors know what you've added and edited. These sort of automatic features of different platforms are going to make sure that communication is clear, concise, and consistent. And along the way, you'll want to consider the tone and presence of your communication as it relates to your audience. So this is when we talked about it when we were doing our not poll, why having your own email domain can help you stand out from other businesses. It's a perception of tone, a tone of professionality that you're setting for your customers that I'm taking this seriously. I'm not just setting up a Gmail account that anyone can set up. I purchased my own domain and I'm maintaining it. So let's talk about the worksheet and how you might utilize it to help understand your business. So we start with documenting your existing tools and their associated needs and processes. So if you're receiving orders from your customers via email rather than through an e-commerce platform, if you're a consultant and like me, you're sending quotes or other communications through this, but you're not necessarily expecting commitment through the email. I say that because certain documents need signed in different signing platforms in order to be legal. Just saying yes to an email can be legally binding, but it's your level of risk tolerance or comfort, like we talked about. So you want to list out all of the needs that you have for email. Maybe this is how you communicate with your employees. Maybe this is how you communicate with your vendors. And then you want to list out the email addresses you use. So for me, this is an ever growing list because for each of my clients, when I'm going to take on continuous management of their website, I also take on the admin at their domain role so that, for that acupuncture company I mentioned earlier, I'm admin at penacu.co so that if there's a problem with that website, I'm getting the email directly to answer the problem with the website rather than a business question that would want to go to the practitioner directly. So you may just have one email address, but you want to capture as much of that as possible. You may even want to, for your own benefit, capture common email addresses that you're receiving information from if this is part of an ongoing process where you're always receiving something from a specific email. You're thinking about building out a description of what your practices are with this worksheet. So it's a little misleading that I just have one line here for everything. It is just to kind of give you an idea so that you can work through it. And you may find that capturing this information in a Word document isn't the best format. Maybe you want to capture that within a spreadsheet. And I'll show you, we have some spreadsheets that are part of this later. And those are laid out differently, just as different options for you to use as tools. And then you want to do the same thing for any chat apps that you use and any phone processes that you use. I can tell you if you're taking credit cards over the phone still, you really want to evaluate that process because if you're not directly entering that credit card information into the payment platform, if you're writing it down on a post-it note even, you're breaking PCI compliance or payment card industry processing rules. So what you want to make sure is that you're documenting every process that might involve phone calls and the phone numbers associated with them so that you have this data to build out your overall processes and find those places for improvement. Now, the next segment I have here are communication channels. So I want to go back to the slide deck and talk a little bit about the difference of when I talk about channels versus tools. So channels of communication, they refer to the pathways or mediums that the information is being exchanged. They sort of represent the concept rather than the tool that you're using to do it. So here it says, common include face-to-face conversations versus phone calls versus emails. We're not talking about using Outlook or using an Android phone or using um, Facebook Messenger. Those are the tools that we're talking about. These are the channels. So voice is a channel, the good old phone call, the personal voice and nothing to look at. You're just talking to someone. There's some good about that, right? You have a personal engagement with someone that you're talking to over the phone. You can provide good emotional context to that, but there's challenges, right? You might get overly emotional or negative in a phone conversation and say something you don't want. And overall, how do you capture the information from that phone call if you're not recording it? Recording conversations can be very challenging, both from a technology and a legal perspective. So I'm not necessarily recommending that you start recording phone calls in order to capture your data, but you do want to capture that data so that you know that your message was delivered and understood, or you're able to at least, check that you spoke to that customer, track the time that you spoke to that customer if you're, tracking time for billing purposes. And then you have to maintain your follow-up or whatever the outcome of that voice conversation was in some other format. So when we talk about voice as a channel, what tools can we apply to that channel in order to make it more effective for us? So let's go back to our worksheet for a moment here. And here we've talked about, some of the channels here being team meetings. We have email listed here again because it's kind of a tool and a channel because the email address itself is part of the tooling, but the application, Outlook, or if you use Thunderbird, maybe you use Opera, maybe you use Mail if you're using an iOS device, or using Gmail if you use an Android device. That would be more of the tool, but email is also kind of a channel. And when we're talking about instant messaging here, you want to talk about all of the messaging, not just through one of the platforms. This is the messages you get as a channel. And then you want to capture your collaboration practices. And we'll talk about that a little more too as we go through, but let's go back to the slides and talk a little more about email. Our daily driver and daily distraction, our favorite friend and worst enemy at the same time. Email's great for a lot of things. It's something that's documented and tracked in some kind of system, whether it, Gmail or whatever you're using. It's there for you to find and search at some point. But it's almost unavoidable, like we talked about, to avoid overload. And, now everybody's signed up for a number of newsletters. You're trying to get your customers to sign up for your newsletter. You've got group messages going back and forth. And then, of course, there's all the spam and junk, right? But you can take control of your inbox by implementing filters and rules depending on the application that you're using. And you don't just have to set rules using the technology tools, you can set rules for yourself too. And this is what I mean here. Set a specific time of day and amount of time that you use to respond to your emails. So yes, it's good to be alerted when things come in. It's good to know that you've got a message and something's pending. But if you're taking moments out of cooking dinner or being with your family or that learning time that we talked about that you need earlier, if you're constantly breaking the thought process to look at your emails or messages, it's not going to be effective. You're not going to absorb or be engaged with what you're actually doing. This goes back to why I chose to be the technology mindful artist, because I want to use technology to help me be more mindful, be more in the moment of my daily life. And you can do that. Um, there are tools that are akin to parental controls that can keep you from using your mobile device too much. But you can make a calendar time and say, this is my email time. Using filters and labels and tags, whatever is available within your email platform to automatically have the things you want stand out, to automatically have things get deleted that you don't necessarily need to view. These can save you immense amount of time and thought. So I suggest setting aside time to go through the emails that you've had for the past. I usually like to look at the last 3 months, last 90 days, and build tools around what was coming in those 90 days. So when I was in a corporate job, this was kind of easier because it's very clear. I want the emails from my boss to be highlighted as important and stay in my inbox. I want emails that I'm not the person they've written them to, that I've already been aware of a topic, or that are ongoing alerts that I just have to look at a regular basis. I want those all to go into different folders and kind of not be in my purview. So depending on what's important to you, what's coming in and out of your inbox, you could really utilize tagging, filtering, and rules depending on your email platform of choice to eliminate how much volume you're looking at and make sure you're looking at the most important things to you. Of course, make sure you're using a signature, because then you don't have to type that every time, and you know that everyone's getting your email address, your social media handles, and whatever else you want in that signature. Use templates to respond to your customers when they've placed an order, when they've given you feedback. There's lots of times when templates can be helpful, even when communicating with your employees about monthly meetings or ongoing company changes, things that are going to happen regularly. Take the time ahead to build out a template to save you time down the line. And there are AI features now built into these platforms that can help you to speed up your response and avoid mistakes. Most of all, you want to make sure you schedule time to regularly declutter and keep things clear for yourself. Um, I find I have a lot of sort of inbox anxiety when there's too many things in my inbox, but other people aren't as worried about things in their inbox if they're all red. But if they're all red, to me, they needed to move somewhere else. So It's all about how you feel about it. Um, but you also want to make sure with email that you're being short and concise. These shouldn't be novels. You should try to keep them, to one or two messages. I see some newsletters that are pages and pages long. Nobody is getting to the end of those. You want to make sure that you're communicating a message that someone is going to get to. Because if it's at the end of your email and they had to look through all of these other things first, they're not going to get to that message. So keeping things simple, regularly decluttering, all of these practices will help you along the way. Messaging, and I don't just mean, Facebook and Instagram here, but text messaging, SMS messaging, and then there's also what are called persistent chat models like Slack or Discord. Um, I'm going to speed up a little here because I should be a little further along the way here. So pardon me if I am skipping over some things along the way. And we're not going to go back to our worksheet, but that is available for you to finish for your business. And we're going to be talking more about these collaboration practices as we go further, and you'll understand more how to fill these out for your business. But this is just available for you to utilize and follow along the way and take back all the information that you gather in it. So messaging, it's great. You could do one-on-one messages, group messages. They can be personal and direct, but again, they're, something that's not easily tracked, managed, recorded. It's hard to go back and find, did I say this to someone in a message or not? So you have to really think about what you utilize messaging for and if it's appropriate. Obviously, utilizing social media messaging can give your customers a personal connection to you without necessarily having them texting your phone or sending you an email. And then you do have features within the Meta Business Suite, if you're using Facebook and Instagram, um, to assign tasks and delegate messages to different people. So there's the ability to utilize some of these platforms to bring efficiency. And then, and this may be limited in scope to the people on this call, just knowing kind of some of your businesses. But if you're not familiar with Slack or persistent chat, what these provide are kind of public or private channels of conversations. And I go back in time to when I used to do listservs or IRC chats when I was a little girl. These are older technologies, but you can capture ongoing conversations about things and everybody can chime in and then you can come to consensus. You can attach documents and images and they can sort of bring together a nice collaboration chat rather than having it be sort of segmented and not feel as live like it does in an email. So there's a lot of great purpose for them, but they can also be, Slack is great because you can bring in emails automatically into your Slack channels. You can bring in text messages and other messages. You can have documents and other things connected live to it, but it's still sort of having another application to go to. Am I having this conversation in Slack or was I having it in email? You have to kind of choose what platforms you want to utilize and then dedicate yourself to using those so that you stop bouncing back and forth between them. It's that technology sprawl that's going to get crazy for you here if you have to utilize too many applications. But collaboration, and specifically for project and task management, it can be very game changing for a business to take control of this utilizing tools. And it can be as simple as making tasks from your emails in Outlook so that you know things have to be done. And the same thing can happen on the Gmail side with Google Tasks. I just mentioned that, there's built-in task assignment in things like Meta Business or MailChimp or Constant Contact, whatever sort of CRM or customer engagement you're using. And then there's wonderful dedicated tools for project management and collaboration. And those include products called Asana, Monday.com. These are task management, project and program management tools that can help you um, look at a large project and segment the small tasks within it, see how they're assigned and what their individual deadlines might be to help you get to your overall goal. Depending on the platform, they have a variety of different functionality and tools. And I've included links in your information sheet that's included with this class, which I'll bring up here. I've included links that review several of these platforms and help you understand how they can best fit into your business. And these links you'll see some of them are from this fitsmallbusiness.com, which is a really good site for reviewing different applications as they apply to small businesses. Some of them are from other sites, but they all kind of cover, what your business might utilize these different platforms for. And then there's documents and files. So this is where a lot of collaboration is taking place in business today. Having the ability for you to simultaneously edit and comment on documents throughout your business workflow, it can be wonderful. It can really bring efficiency, but you have to be ready to keep them organized in a clear structure. That means tagging them or using keywords in some kind of meaningful way to make them searchable, and having visibility controls so that only the right people can see those documents if you don't want them publicly accessible. So this might require um, knowledge of file sync and share platforms, which are often integrated into collaboration platforms. So I'm talking about things like Google Drive, OneDrive. If you're using Microsoft products, you're probably using Microsoft OneDrive to share and collaborate on those products. And through those, you can create different permission controls on your documents. You also get to see version history with a lot of these products and see what changes have been made. And that alone can be enough. But content is a large word. For a business, there's all different kinds of content, and communications platforms will often cover text-based documents, but for managing spreadsheets, images, or other files, you might need special systems. For example, if your team is collaborating on images and video that you want to share on social media and you have to get prepared for using Meta Business, you're probably using Adobe products. The Adobe Creative Cloud Team subscription will give your team collaboration tools to share and comment and tag. And then there's the concept of digital asset management. All these images, videos, audio files, they're all digital assets, just like your software, our software assets within an IT or technology environment. You have your hardware assets. Digital assets need to be managed as well. And it's a whole topic unto itself. So we're not going to talk about digital asset management, but if it's something that you're interested in, please remember to comment on it in the survey so that we can have another class hosted on digital asset management. And when you pick your platforms and you get them organized and managed, the next thing you're going to have to do is have a policy. you need to document the procedure and have a policy to follow that procedure in order to have a backbone for your employees and to give yourself peace of mind that, okay, now that I've documented that this is the process, whenever an employee calls off, an employee has to email this request form to this email address, and you know that you've taught them all that this is the policy, you've documented it, then you don't have to worry about walking in the door and having your employee not be there and not knowing why. And if you do walk in the door and your employee is not there and you don't know why, you had a policy in place, you trained them on the procedure, and they didn't follow it. So now you can utilize that in order to help either, let that employee go or use it to build an effective improvement plan for them. And these will be living and changing documents that you'll have to keep updating. Your processes have to change as your business change, as your employees change, as things grow. Um, but they can provide you protection in case of legal concerns. I work heavily with the Cybersecurity Information and Security Administration, or CISA. That is the government's sort of cybersecurity arm. They're working to help the software industry as a whole bring more transparency. And what's happening now is that companies are being required to provide things that they hadn't provided in the past. And they have to have policies in place that say that we're doing things to secure our software. And there are CTOs and CEOs out there that have to be able to say, yes, my company follows these procedures. When they submit their 10Ks to their investors, they have to be able to say, yes, my company follows these procedures, or else they are legally liable when something bad happens. So having policies and procedures in place, huge, critical importance. And then you need feedback. You need some way to know, are these processes working? I mapped out my processes. I figured out how things are flowing and what tools we're using and what email addresses and messages and how things are getting sent back and forth. And we have this policy and procedure in place, but if nobody has a way to tell you if it's working or not, it's just going to keep progressing, whether it's good or bad. So you want to have some way for your employees, your customers, anyone you're communicating with, anyone you're utilizing tooling with, that you're building processes around, to give you feedback on those processes. This can be as simple as on your website having, add comments to your orders so they can tell you, it was really hard for me to find this item on your website. And then you can better organize your website. That is part of that process. Having feedback mechanisms built into all of your processes is going to help you to improve. You do want to ask for specifics if you can, and if possible, make it anonymous, where it's appropriate, so that it makes people even more comfortable. Because again, like, you can't improve what you're not measuring. So you want to store this feedback and, you know, collect it along the way and see if the feedback is improving as well. So that you can find if there's any barriers to your communication. Do you have employees or customers using a language that you aren't natively supporting in your communication processes, whether it's your newsletter doesn't have a Spanish option and you happen to have a lot of Spanish people reading your newsletter? Um, and then, you know, based on how you're assessing things, you're going to find areas of improvement. There's always going to be something to improve. If you get it perfect, you've got to let me know, because I don't think I've ever heard anyone say, my business, every single aspect of our communication It's running perfectly. Nothing ever drops the ball. Everybody's included, and it's totally effective. You'll have to let me know. So let's talk a little bit about the common platform options out there. And I start here with the big bad boy. We're in the Pacific Northwest here. It's Microsoft country a little bit, but they still are kind of the most accessible, most well-known tools available for your business for managing your email and calendar. They include task management tools. They integrate well with other tools. That's not to say that the next ones on the list, Google, Zoho, and Odoo, are not equally as user-friendly, accessible, and have the same functionality. They're listed here because they do. Um, and don't forget, there's tons of different options that you can add specific to your business. And that's why in your information packet here, you'll see all of these different tools listed because maybe you just want to use Google Docs, but you want to use Zoom for your meetings instead of Google Meet. And you're going to use the Asana integration to track your tasks instead of Google Tasks. And you still have images that you need to share and collaborate with in the Adobe platform. So there's a lot of mixing and matching. And this doesn't even really scratch the surface of all the different niche tools that every business might have. And we're going to continue to talk about that. This is just related to communication and collaboration. But um, these core platforms up here, Microsoft, Google, and Zoho, integrate well with so many other tools that makes them very much stand out. Finding the best tool for your business is is going to require that you have that agnostic evaluation. You use that communication worksheet, and next you use the platform evaluation spreadsheet concept that I also provided to you. So I'm going to open that up here. So this is just a starter template. It is by no means complete. And each business is going to have different functionality that you're looking for. But I've tried to cover here a lot of basics to evaluating collaboration platforms. And what you would do is you would look at each platform and you would say, okay, so for instant messaging, the tool that I'm evaluating, and you'd rename this, you'd duplicate this by making a copy. And I like to always keep a copy of the template, so I'm actually going to make 2 copies. I'm going to say here, I'm evaluating Google versus Microsoft. And for team chat instant messaging, Microsoft Teams is easy to use, but can be flaky. So the pros, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. The pro is that it's easy to use, but it can be flaky with video. So I'm going to give it a 4. And on the other hand, my Google Meet messaging, it's a hard one because I don't actually use Google for instant messaging, but it's integrated with email, but it's not as widely used. So I'm only going to give it a 2. But as you can see, you would go through any of your requirements and you'd have a score at the end that you could compare and you could compare each of the different criteria against them. You could get really fancy in your spreadsheet if you want. You could build out a pivot table that would compare each of them, but I didn't do that because this is just supposed to be a basic starter to get you going and not overwhelm you. Evaluating platforms is actually a full-time job. It used to be part of my full-time job. Now you can even use artificial intelligence to help you search for platforms. You can say, Copilot, which is free for everyone to use. Say Microsoft Copilot, what is the best email app for my small business? Now, I can tell you already, this is going to be a little bit of a loaded answer. And that's what I wanted to say. You can use AI to research, but you have to be more specific than this because as you see, guess what it put first? It put Microsoft Outlook first. We're using Microsoft Copilot, no surprise here. It did bring Gmail in and Microsoft Thunder or in Mozilla Thunderbird, I'm sorry. And it's giving you a variety of different options here. So you'll be able to sort of look at the information it provided you and fill out that sheet. But again, it's not going to provide you the answer. And it can be biased, skewed, and it can even provide you misinformation. The concept of AI hallucination is very real. If you watch my YouTube channel, I have some funny videos about my explorations with AI, and there's a lot more to come on that. I'm about 3 months behind on my videos right now. You do want to be careful when you select tools that you consider how they integrate with your other platforms. And we're going through a lot of different platforms today. And we're going to start with financial systems when we get back from taking a little bit of a pause next. So I say here, sometimes you might need to engage expert help to have you run a request for information, a request for proposal to find the right tools to help you run a true proof of concept where you're setting up a trial of that program and you're running it through your actual business processes. That proof of concept, first of all, they're not always free, depending on the vendor that you're working with. And um, it might need a lot of overhead for setup. You might need a lot of your employee time. So sometimes utilizing outside help can get you over the finish line a little easier than doing it all yourself. But hopefully, I've given you some tools here to help you feel like you could do that yourself and using the functionality that you've identified in your communication worksheet, you'll be able to build out your processes and then identify the functionality that you need to take that platform evaluation template where you want to go. So I've already gone a lot longer than I wanted to before taking a pause. So let's take a quick break. Does anyone have any questions? Please feel free to raise your hand or unmute or put a question into the chat. Happy to answer however you ask. All right, since there's no questions, we're just going to go ahead and take a quick 5-minute break. So we'll be back at 4:55. That's like a minute. It's 4:49, 4:55 to keep going. I'm just going to be muted real quick and then I'll come back. But feel free to ask me something and I will come back or put a message in the chat. We're having such a beautiful day outside. I'm glad so many of you decided to stay at your computers or cell phones to watch and engage in this class today. Hopefully, we'll still have a little bit of sunshine time when we're over here at 6:30. If you're still out there, raise your hand if you think I need to add background music for joining the meeting and for breaks. I will engage with some local musicians, or maybe I'll pull some of the Bayside Singers music to play in the background if you think that's something you'd like to have. No. Okay. No music. And if Rebecca's the only vote, then that's the only vote. If anyone would like to put in the chat what their business is, I'd love to. I know from some of your responses to the survey, I know what those are, but I'd love to get us all, over the course of these workshops, collaborating and helping to grow each other's businesses. Ooh, Westport Bubble Works, selling bubbles at festivals. Oh, well, great. I hope we'll be seeing you at the Razor Clam Festival. Ocean Park is having a 4th of July parade. Oh, we could really use bubbles there. Hmm. Ah, let me see. Ocean Park Chamber of Commerce. There's the link to the Ocean Park Chamber of Commerce. Figured if they're looking for clowns, bubbles should be perfect. Mermaid Festival and Pirate Days. I have not been to Westport since moving to the coast. I actually was originally going to move to Westport, and then there was nothing on the market when I went to buy. So I will have to see if I can get there for the Mermaid Festival or Pirate Days. Both sound fun. Oh, Connie administers several nonprofits. Okay. Well, hopefully you can gain enough to help you with those nonprofits throughout the course here. And the course will be recorded. So you'll be able to go back and look at the videos if there's things that you take out of it. But I'm assuming that you've got to be juggling a lot of communication with those nonprofits. So having a good communication platform would be very important. Oh, yes, the Garlic Festival too. The Chamber. There's another festival. There are events the chamber also manages I'm not thinking of. There's always a holiday tree lighting, but I don't think bubbles would be appropriate there. A little too cold for bubbles. All right, well, let's get back to it. We do still have a lot more to cover. Enterprise resource planning. So for a lot of people, this means I'm talking about finance. I'm talking about your financial system, but that also might include e-commerce if you're selling something online. And that might be a point of sale machine like a Square or accepting payments via PayPal on your phone, which means you're making sales and you have to manage inventory. So really, it just means all of it. Enterprise resource planning is really just business planning. What is your primary business financial system? And what does it give you? So it gives you visibility and control over your business. This is going back to that core concept, right? You can't improve what you're not measuring. Hopefully, you are measuring your expenses. Hopefully, you're measuring your income, your cash flow, and what that means to you from a revenue standpoint in some meaningful fashion. Banking has changed a lot in just my lifetime. Yeah, I worked for a company where I sat on the floor and they had this giant paper ledger that they had been keeping since the 70s, and I had to help them organize all the way to now when I can basically do all of that from my phone. So there are pros and cons to how you manage your finances, but you have to have some way of taking control of them because otherwise, how do you make decisions about your business? How do you know if your business is profitable or not? How do you know if you can expand or you can buy more supplies without any kind of tracking methods? You can't keep it all in your head. You'll lose your mind, right? So there are a lot of different tools around this that scope everywhere from someone like me who's just doing services related work where I don't have a brick and mortar to worry about. I don't have, let's say, products that I'm selling. I don't have to maintain inventory. There's not a lot of regulation involved for me. I could use a very simple financial management product versus a company that has employees and inventory and manufactures product. They're going to need a much more robust, true enterprise resource planning product. So that's why I've given you another worksheet, the Financial System Needs Assessment Worksheet Guide. Again, one of those survey questions is going to be, do I need to shorten the titles of the worksheets that I provide you? Uh, so this is a way for you, just like the communication process, to think about all the aspects of your business as they relate to your finances and how you manage them so that you can choose the right system to meet your needs. And I've tried to cover as much of the basic evaluation criteria, functionality as possible that you would have in a financial system. But that's again why you're going to have to go through and answer these questions because it's going to uncover functionality that I may not have taken into account here because it's specific to your business. But this is a guide to help you, and hopefully we've covered as much as possible. And you'll see here, we cover a little bit about on-premise hosting or cloud-based hosting. And what this means is, are you managing a system yourself that is maybe just a simple Mac or PC at your home where you have TurboTax and QuickBooks installed and they don't connect to the internet and that's just what you run versus having the full cloud-based accounting software online that you're accessing anywhere from any device. So that's the difference there. It's all about finding what's right for you and knowing if you use outside services that you'll have to be compliant or at least compatible with what those outside services use. So if you use a CPA or outside payroll or other services, you want to make sure that that financial system is going to integrate with their systems. And that's why having an in-house or an on-premise solution might not be best if you don't have adequate systems to support it. If you need a lot of functionality, you might need a server. You might need a space to put that server. And then you have to have the router and networking equipment for that server. And that can be a lot to manage. If you have a business that can't just work with an easy desktop solution. And that's why most companies, even large organizations, have decided to move to cloud-based offerings. So what is cloud accounting? How does it benefit me? So this is the term used to describe a financial system that happens entirely in the cloud. You're not running the server. You're not worried about its uptime or ability to connect to it. It's just there for you. And with most of these, you can connect to them from multiple devices. You can have multiple employees with different levels of access. It can help you as far as making sure that you are flexible enough to meet your needs. The cost savings, avoiding late fees, penalties, and missed opportunities. I think that this is possible with on-premise solutions as well. If you build in the right rules and processes, but a lot of that is automated within cloud-based accounting now. And there's a lot of artificial intelligence tools built into cloud-based accounting now. So there's a lot there that can just sort of take the pressure off you as your technology manager to run your financial system. Because in most larger, even mid-sized organizations, managing the financial system, managing the ERP takes multiple individuals dedicated to just running that. At the beginning of class, I talked about working at Snap-on Business Solutions, and they had a team of over 25 people that ran their in-house ERP system. Now, it was extremely robust. They had very advanced in-house server systems and all of the dedicated networking and IT people to run those servers. But these 25 people had to keep the financial system up and running because it accepted orders from the customers, it managed inventory, it managed user workflow, it managed back-end accounting and finance, budgeting, capital expenditures, and communication with the board of directors because they were a publicly traded company. So there was a lot to manage, and a lot of it has to be customized, and a lot of it has to be continuously updated and upgraded. So there's a lot. But even with these little cloud-based solutions, there are still challenges and risks. It's hard to say that you don't need a dedicated person to run it. You, if you're an entrepreneur or a small business owner, are probably that dedicated person that's going to run your financial system. And at least have reporting and overhead funneling to you directly so that you know how much income your business is generating, how much spend is going out the door, and where you're landing at. Now, that doesn't mean that cloud accounting is completely safe from a security standpoint either. If you're the one that's setting up the back end of your platform and you're the administrator of it, you're also going to have to understand how to apply permissions to the rest of your employees that need access to that system, and be careful that you're not allowing any kind of exposure to the nefarious hackers and other I don't actually like using the term hacker because I think it's kind of it's misplaced, because a lot of the cyber criminals, which is a much more effective term, aren't actually hacking anything. They're just exploiting existing vulnerabilities within systems. So they don't necessarily have to understand coding or even have a deep knowledge of systems in order to gain access to them today, because certain things make it very easy for them. But that's, to me, the security risk is far less than the efficiency gained by moving to cloud accounting. So I encourage you to utilize the worksheet to evaluate your needs and decide on your action plan. And this talks about trial periods to test solutions. Some of the software is free for small business use and doesn't necessarily require a lot of cost with it if it is at cost. For instance, I'm using the free version of Zoho Books right now to meet my needs because I'm the only employee. So I only need one user, and I don't have sort of advanced workflow and taxation needs. But there are offerings from all of these. Some of them do have free tiers. Um, you can even just do this with something as simple as Microsoft Excel and a series of spreadsheets. If you're being really simplistic, having a cash flow spreadsheet, having an expenditure spreadsheet, having profit and loss statement sheet, you can build those all out yourself. I would not want to. I think there are so many accessible financial platforms today, and I'm not even talking about these are all the cloud-based options here, but there are options that are desktop options that are free and open source. I used to use a program called New Cash, which actually starts with a G, or GNU Cash. It's a multi-platform application, so it runs on Windows or Linux or Mac, and it's everything you need in a financial system. If you want to run it on your desktop, it'll generate all those critical business reports for you. It'll do imports from your banking system. It'll issue invoices and track jobs, but you have to run it. It requires someone to set it up. You have to download the banking information. And all of that is a lot more automated in these cloud platforms now. You still have to do it. There's kind of no getting around getting the information in and out of the platforms, making sure the information in the platforms is accurate. All of those functions still have to happen. They can just be a lot easier in these cloud-based platforms. And I'll show you a little bit here about what Zoho Books looks like, since I have only been using it a short time. So obviously I haven't been using it. I don't really have cash flow going here. I've been doing some testing, but you can see it offers me kind of that instant dashboard look that I want, so I know what's going on in my business. I can manage sales. I can add different customers, create quotes and invoices. I can track my expenses, track my vendors, and then generate all the different reports that I want. And again, this is at the free level of this application. I could upgrade it if I needed more functionality to a standard level. So if I need to manage more than one user, because that's what it says here, I can invite up to 3 users. If I need to manage up to 5,000 invoices, and you'll see each level gets different. And this is going to be the same when you're evaluating any financial platform. There's going to be a functionality versus cost equation. But find what works for you. FreshBooks, Zero, Wave, I think they all offered a little bit of a free platform. Wave. So I think, yeah, this might either have a low cost or a free option. Because once you have this data, you can really grasp how to move your business forward. You can start to measure your monthly sales better. You can start to measure your expenses better. And you can even build out this same kind of evaluation template with your financial categories and functionality and feature needs rather than collaboration process, and compare Zoho versus Zero to see which best meets your needs. Now we're at another little pause after we've gone over financial systems. Does anyone have any questions? I should
Hi,
have
I
built.
have a question, if that's okay, Lynn.
Yeah, hi Sandy, thank
Hi,
you.
hi. Sorry, I missed kind of the introduction exchange during the last break. I run a nonprofit Tokeland Food Bank here in Tokeland, Washington.
Oh, how
Um,
wonderful. Thank you.
thanks. So that dashboard that you just showed that you're setting up and kind of testing, is does that integrate with like your corporate card, credit card, your banking, your PayPal account? I mean, how do you bring together and integrate all of those kind of data sources into one?
Yeah, so I purposefully didn't set up that part so that you
No,
wouldn't
of
see
course you
any of
didn't.
my
I just
financial data,
You can
but
talk about it, of course.
yeah, you can add any number of bank accounts and credit cards to the platform. I haven't done it yet with this platform, but
Mhm.
most of them either have a direct connection or they have an import method. So if you're
Yeah.
in PayPal, for instance, integrates with a lot of the platforms that I've used. When I mentioned that open source software that I could install on my computer and just have on premise, that when you go into your bank, most of them offer downloads. And again, I wish I could walk you through this, but it's because it's personal
Sure,
information, I
sure.
can't show you that. But you log into your bank and it allows you to download or export your transactions. And then that can be imported into the system.
Okay.
And what you can do to automate that is a lot of times the bank will offer set this up on an automated schedule and it will email you the export. And
Mhm.
then that email you can automate to import into your system depending on the next section is automation tools.
Okay.
Um, but otherwise, you're just, when you get that email, you can have a scheduled time when you do your import from your different accounts. If you're getting a lot of different reports that you have to import, you might want to set up a special time of day or week or month where you're doing those imports.
Mhm. Okay, all right. And this
Yeah,
is
but
cloud-based, right? So this would be a
yes,
kind of a cloud-based solution, okay. And
Zoho Books is cloud-based. All of the ones that are included here in the popular
mm,
cloud accounting platforms, these are all cloud-based and all will have some kind of connection or import method.
okay, okay, good. And all right, and that's part of the materials that you sent in your attachment.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay, good. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate you coming on camera and asking the question. Anybody else? Get into automation. We do live in such a wonderful place. This is not my dog, but this is her best friend at the bottom of the screen here. I was trying to get them into the rainbow picture and they were not cooperating with me, those goofy doggos. So there are few businesses that have today or can even completely automate everything that they do. Just ask Amazon. They haven't been able to do it yet, and they are trying as hard as they can to automate every process. I recently saw their commercial for their new shopping cart that you just walk through the store and put all your items in the cart and it scans them, and you don't have to worry about any kind of checkout process. You just walk out the door and put it in your car and you're good to go. Well, they're getting close, but they haven't completely automated that yet because I still had to go to the store and put the things in my cart. And there's not a robot doing that yet. So when I get my Rosie, and she's taking care of everything like on the Jetsons, then I'll feel like they've really automated everything. But most businesses are wasting time and money by not automating where it is appropriate in their business. So just like understanding what platforms will best meet our business needs, finding out what automations can be applied to those processes is going to improve every part of them. So you have to know those processes inside and out before you can figure out how to apply them. And that's why process mapping is just another assessment tool to document the way our current business is working. So we're going to talk through process mapping. It's a technique or kind of classification of techniques because there's different ways that you can go about it. But it's a way that you're going to create a visual representation of your business process so that you can identify the steps, the interactions, the dependencies, everything that's going on within that process. And afterwards, you're going to have clarity of how that work is done. You're going to be able to find bottlenecks, redundancies, and inefficiencies to make things run better. It's going to help improve that communication that is so critical to everything, like we know from the beginning of class. And this is again, your foundation for continuous process improvement is mapping these out. So first we have to identify the process. And as we go through this, we're gonna walk through some like scenarios that we might apply to these that are kind of common to business. So, for instance, customer onboarding. We sold something to a new customer, and now we want to have their data available. We want to know that they're a customer. So let's gather the information about this customer onboarding process. So for me, interviewing stakeholders in this process is kind of easy. I'm the stakeholder. I'm the only one in my business interacting with customers. But let's say this wasn't my business. Let's talk about a local business that I work with. It happens to be an art gallery. So they onboard customers in a couple different ways. Their customers may come in the door of their gallery. Their customers may um, come to a class. They may go to an online class, or they may go to one of the other galleries that they sell art at. So, in order to onboard these customers, I have to have a couple different processes. I have to have a couple different interviews with the people that work in the gallery that meet the people face to face and answer the phone. See, there's another channel that I got that customer information from. So I have to collect all that data. I have to go through all those processes and collect the data and map out each step along the way. When a customer comes in the door, how do I capture that information? When a customer is on the phone, how do I capture that information? And what do I do with that information? How does it flow from there? How do I complete the process of making sure that I now have captured that customer's information so that I can continue to grow that relationship? So create a map. A lot of us may be familiar with flowcharts. They're, they use common symbols to represent decisions, which way a process is flowing, if there's sort of stops in the process, and what has to happen. So you can use those common symbols, and some of the tools that we've already talked about will have built-in workflow capabilities. There are also free process mapping software applications, or even you can utilize PowerPoint has these symbols built into it, or Google Sheets. So you could build it in a slide type application. But you want to identify the start and end points. Customer walked in the door, customer walked out the door. But is that really where the process begins and ends? You want to list the steps in a sequential order because you're evaluating the process. So you're looking at how it's happening today because maybe how it's happening today isn't the best way. And of course, you want to always include the manual tasks, the data entry, and the decision points. These are the sort of meat and potatoes. I got to find a good vegan term for that. The tofu and potatoes of the process mapping. Inputs and outputs. So customer enters information on a form and I print it out with their order when we ship it to them. Inputs and outputs. Where is the information going? Who's moving information? If you have somebody that's greeting them in the gallery versus someone that's following up with them about classes or emailing them about their purchases, how does that information get moved between those roles and departments? Where are the decision points made? So is this customer going to get a discount because they're a new customer? Does someone have to approve that? Is that part of the customer onboarding process? That's not a great decision point example. In our scenario, there aren't really great decision points scenarios. But you want to make sure that you're capturing where that acceptance or approval versus, where we're approving and denying a process. Highlight any delays or wait times. So customer ordered a piece of art and wanted it custom framed on the website. Now I have to get the framing done. Do I have the right mat for that? Maybe I have to order it and there's a delay in the ordering process. So I want to map that out so I know how that impacts the overall customer process. And are there ways that I can improve that? They wanted something custom, so I didn't have it available. Are there places I could order from that wouldn't have as much of a delay? Or could I keep more stock? Would it make more sense to stock things? These are all sort of things that will come out of mapping the process. And you gain a lot of benefits. You gain that visibility, just like Having that financial system that has the easy dashboards where you can see where everything's going. If you have all your processes mapped out, you can more easily see where action and activity is happening and impacting your business. And obviously, it can help you solve problems. If you're having a problem in your business, this is almost a way I would go about figuring out how to solve it. I need to know everything about that process before I can even comprehend how I would solve it. Creating standardization. Consistency is key, right? You're going to make mistakes if you have less standardization versus more standardization, the more consistent you can be. Ironically, I just watched, it's an older documentary called The Founder. It's about the Ray Kroc and the two brothers that originally started McDonald's. And it is kind of amazing what they did that was so revolutionary for the fast food industry. Before that, you didn't have food that could just be handed to you after you ordered it. This was, shocking to people, and they kind of have a funny way of displaying that in the documentary. I recommended it. Michael Keaton is Ray Kroc in it. It was a pretty good documentary. But the speedy delivery process that they created, they mapped out their processes on a tennis ball court. They drew out what their restaurant looked like, where all the different stations were, and they mapped out the process of how they made the burgers, how they put the drinks together, how they made the fries. And then when they found things that didn't work, they erased the chalk, they redrew how they'd want to reorganize their building, and they went through the processes again. And they watched how the employees interacted with each other to find out things like, oh, you can't move like this or you're going to dump all the hamburgers off the tray. Or, why does he forget to always put the onions on? Is it not in a logical place? How do I get the ketchup on evenly on every burger? Oh, I had to make a custom device for it. So that was a really great. I actually wish now that I would have like clipped out that part of the documentary. Well, it was a docudrama or whatever. But that part of the movie about process mapping, because it's a really great physical demonstration of how understanding every aspect of your process is going to show you where things are going right, where things are going wrong, how you can change them in order to achieve maximum efficiency. And then use that to train your employees. Because at the end of the day, if you are an employee driven business, even if you're a solo flyer like myself, right? I do so many different things in my business that if I didn't have documented processes to go back to say, oh, I had a customer that wants a refund. What's my policy on the refund? How do I process that refund? Because that's not something that happens very often, luckily. That's something that, there are these things in your business that hopefully aren't happening to you every single day, but are happening on a semi-regular basis that you don't want to take up your brain space just remembering. That's why having the process mapped, having a procedure documented, having a policy to follow that procedure, all of these are building a confidence stack alongside your technology stack. And you're going to need to utilize your communication and collaboration tooling in order to keep the process maps updated, in order to keep the policies updated, in order to keep the procedures updated, and where possible, automate that. Have it automatically remind you this policy hasn't been reviewed in so long. This process hasn't been mapped out in a year. Things may have changed. Go back to it. So what can we do to automate things that maybe aren't automatically built into applications? There are some third-party products out there, and I say third-party because they're built to be integrations. And one of them I'm going to talk about is Zapier. This is a very common integration platform. And you should always read the terms and conditions before signing up for anything. My ITAM hat would be remiss if I did not remind you that you always want to be aware of the legal policies and practices around any services that you use. But especially as you get into using cloud applications, it's important that you understand what your usage rights are. We'll talk a little bit more about this at the end when we talk about managing your technology. Um, but I saw myself clicking through those things. I've used Zapier before, so I am familiar with the terms. Um, but if you're ever utilizing something for the first time or you're signing up for a new service, take the time, read through the terms and conditions, make sure there's nothing in there that you find unacceptable, that they're not collecting data or using you for marketing purposes that you find unacceptable. A lot of times you just have to send an email to opt out of things that you don't like in agreements. But if you're not reading them, you don't know that it's there. So Zapier has this fun way of creating zaps or automated workflows, interfaces, forms, connections that help to automate processes. And this actually has a cute little built-in AI tool where you can say something like, add a rejectee to a Slack message, create a task in Trello. Now, for all of you on the call, this may have sounded like I just spoke a foreign language. So what it's talking about is a software development platform, the Slack messaging platform, and then the Trello collaboration and task management app. But let's make our solution something a little simpler, like I want Google email from Gmail to automatically create a calendar reminder for follow-up. Let's see what it can give me. So it says I can look for an email matching trigger. So I can connect it to my email and have it search in my email for something specific. And I'm not going to actually go through the process of connecting it to my email here because that would violate some privacy rules here on the recording. But you'd connect it to your email, and the trigger could be it's an email from this email address. And now the action would be in Google Calendar to create a detailed event when that trigger of the email is hit. Now, it's not going to work because obviously I don't have everything set up with the email and all. And there's a little more to this platform. I'm not going to say it's totally intuitive, easy to use out of the box. Zapier does require a little bit of knowledge, but guess what? You could go to Microsoft Copilot and say, help me learn how to best automate my email and calendar processes with Zapier. AI is really great for learning things. It can point you into the direction of YouTube videos that are effective, or like this, it can provide me information on what Zapier Zaps can do. And it's showing me here that I can create it for OneNote using the Microsoft Toolkit, Microsoft Outlook, and OneNote. I can do it in Google Docs with Outlook. Um, Several Zapier integrations exist that can bring different efficiencies. And I think you get one free Zap, um, but we can look here at their plan a little bit to give you an idea. Um, So yeah, this free plan for just one person setting up Zaps. Now I will say this, most of these free plans are one individual. They do not intend for you to share your email, login, and password with someone else. It actually is usually a violation of the terms and conditions of use if you give someone your password to access a platform. And we see this very commonly with things like Zoom, things like Dropbox, things like Adobe Creative Cloud, where, there's a cost to it if you want the plan that has additional users. So you just share the password amongst your teammates. Well, it's very unlikely that Microsoft, Adobe, or any of these companies are going to come after your nonprofit or the bubble works. They're not big targets, but you're still legally violating those terms and conditions. So, as much as possible, you want to try to avoid it. It also creates a security issue because you're sharing your password with someone else. Hopefully, that's a unique password to that platform and you're not sharing it with anyone else. But it means if someone gets that one password, they might have access to multiple things. And if you're not changing it regularly because you're sharing it with people, it's more open to attack. So just as a general rule, try to adhere to the terms and conditions as much as possible and don't share your accounts. And you'll find that the free benefits of a lot of them are still great. Nonprofits, specifically with some pieces of software, get free plans. So you might want to take a look at that. Um, but if not, oftentimes it's worth it to just pay that additional fee for the efficiency that you get from the tool. Microsoft also has a tool called Power Automate that integrates with the Microsoft suite. So if you're using Microsoft as your primary communication platform, you might want to consider using Power Automate. It does similar things that Zapier does. It's just a lot more, let's say, prone to the Microsoft environment products. So Zapier is built to work with a lot of different third-party products. You'll find Zaps for Google products, for the Zoho products, for Microsoft products across the board. Microsoft, they maintain compatibility with a lot of other applications, but they're really going to push you into staying into their same ecosystem. Kind of like when you're an iOS or an Apple device user and you're kind of continuously kept in that same Apple ecosystem. So we talked a little bit about our example process, of order entry. You have your order, you've received it via phone, you have to go and check the inventory for it, you have to pack it, ship it, send it out. So to map that process, you're going to start with that starting point at the order being received, because that's the process that you're mapping, is the fulfillment, not the receiving of that order, which is another process that you would want to map. But we're mapping the fulfillment at this point. Okay, got the order. We have to enter the data. We have to check the inventory. We have to pack the product, and we have to ship it out. So we've mapped out how all of those steps work. And now we can look at how to improve those. So for the order entry process, that can be easily automated today through even tools as simple as PayPal. But if you're selling through a website, e-commerce platforms like WooCommerce, they make it very easy for all of your order information to be automated and delivered to you in email or whatever form you need to get it to the next stage, which is where the inventory is kept. We haven't talked at all about inventory systems, but depending on what you use, if you're using WooCommerce has built-in inventory in that platform, it could be something as simple as a spreadsheet that you're utilizing. But if you build a Zap that when you get an email that says order for this product, it checks this spreadsheet in Google Sheets and sends you back a message that says inventory available and tells the person to go grab it and pack it. Now you've automated the order entry and the inventory check. And all you have is a message going to your packer saying, hey, this order needs to be packed and shipped. Nothing else had to be done. The customer placed the order, the inventory was checked, it was good to go. So it went right to packing and shipping. And that's just one of, as you know, hundreds of processes, that at least dozens of processes. As a solopreneur, I have at least dozens of processes. I wouldn't say hundreds of processes, but even the gallery I work for has hundreds of processes at the end of the day that go into everything that is that business. So for each of those processes, this is what you want to go through to figure out, what can I automate with all this technology that's available, even just in the existing platforms that I'm using for collaboration, for financial management, or for collaboration. Before we go on to our final section, do we have any questions about process mapping and automation? All right, well, I won't waste any of our time. We will jump right into it then. So we've talked about tools that improve communication, financial management. Now we've got Zapier doing automation of our manual processes, and some of the challenges with choosing the platforms we've been able to talk about. But one of the biggest challenges comes to the implementation. You've chosen what you think is the right product, and now you have to get it into place. And wouldn't you know it, a lot of times that ends up being the hardest part, especially if you're trying to implement a tool across a larger company with multiple locations. There can be a lot of nuances to it. And surprise, what I'm going to tell you, you have to keep improving it. So once you've implemented something and trained and everybody's running on it, you're not done yet. You still have to keep going, because business never business never stops changing. Technology never stops changing. So you have to keep up with that or get left behind. So keys for successful technology implementation. And these are very broad, because every piece of technology has its own nuances to implementation. But of course, you needed to go through those assessments. So the whole first part of this presentation is about understanding and assessing your tools and needs. And we talked about how to specifically assess our communications products, our financial products, and our general processes for automation. So that's where we're getting how to identify the specific technology needs. Then you have the wonderful process of vendor evaluation. And this is um, where having the platform evaluation template can come into play. In this sense, Google and Microsoft are vendors. And I want to just make a statement here that in the technology world, there can be segmentation between what means a vendor and what means a product or a manufacturer. And these lines get blurry. So we're talking about Microsoft, and they make M365, which is the current version of their Office suite subscription, what they call it. But I can buy Microsoft through a licensed Microsoft reseller. They would be my vendor. Now, you can also buy direct. And in the case of most small businesses, that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be buying directly from Google, Microsoft, Zapier, all of these platforms. You're going to go directly to their website and you're going to buy from them. But you were buying a lot of technology, you're working with larger businesses, you might want to work with a reseller like SHI, CDW. There are a lot of them out there. And they offer you sort of a layer of in between me and the manufacturer directly so that I can get a better deal with Microsoft through working with my vendor, my reseller, CDW, because not only am I buying my Microsoft subscription from CDW, I'm buying my computers, I'm buying my mobile devices, I'm buying my Adobe software, I'm buying other things from them. So they're able to give me discounts based on my overall relationship with them as a reseller versus the individual products that I might be buying from the different manufacturers. And like I said, this is more applicable as your business is larger, but it's something to keep into consideration with some of your platforms. Like if you have a web developer working for you, they might have to pick a hosting platform for your website. And you might want to work on that evaluation with them and not just have them pick it for you directly. Maybe they are telling you that they want to build your website in Squarespace, and you're saying, well, no, I think I'd rather have it built in WordPress in case I want to move it someday. And they want to go through the evaluation with you. They're going to be doing the purchase at the end of the day, but you're the one utilizing the product. So you might want to be involved in that product evaluation if you're not actually the direct buyer. Just some things to think about as you're evaluating how to successfully implement new technology into your business. You need a clear plan and strategy for how you're going to implement it. You want to have fixed timelines. You want to know that you have the right resources, and you want to know how to manage risks along the way if things don't go the way you intend them to, if deadlines are missed. Let's say you're implementing a new financial system and you have an outside accountant that you need to have integrated with your system, and you set a deadline for that, but they didn't contact your technical person. What is the risk if you don't get connected to their system? Are you going to miss a financial reporting deadline? So you want to develop your plan as clearly as possible so that you know what resources you need, how long things should take. And I will say, there's this beautiful thing called scope creep. And that means that you can do whatever you want to plan out how you're going to implement this. And then along the way, someone says, hey, but doesn't this also let me, I don't know, file this form? Oh, yeah, it can definitely file that form for you. We'll get that set up as part of this phase. Now you've expanded the scope of your original plan, and you have to incorporate that new time into the plan and getting it tested and everything else we're going to talk about at the in the other bullet points. So that's the term scope creep means that projects tend to slowly gain more requirements, more needs, they creep you, and that just drags your timeline. It can even lead to a plan just failing and you not being able to properly implement what you've purchased. So you want to make sure that you stick to that plan once you create it. And if additional features and functionality need to be added or modified down the line, create a separate plan for enhancement or modification afterwards so that you don't miss your original target. So, testing and piloting. Obviously, you're implementing something, you just want to make sure that it's working, but you need a controlled environment to do it in first. You don't want to do, let's change over to financial system and then test it once it's live. You definitely want to be in it first. So you're testing in an environment that's not connected to what's called your production or your actual live business data. So this should be part of your consideration, is that it's either you're building out your new cloud financial accounting system and still using your old system, and the data is just kind of being anonymized into test data for the new system, but you don't want to impact your actual business testing the new application. But you want to be aware that you're going to need resources, including people, probably yourself, to test that and make sure that everything works as you want it to in every process scenario. And then there's training. If you by yourself are the one doing it, this might not be a huge deal, but in most companies, training employees on using any new technology, new process, even if it's not technology, just trying to teach employees on a process change, it's time consuming. You have to make sure that they adapt to it. You have to continually follow up with it. So this is not something that you want to go light on. You want to make sure that you have clear training documentation, you have a process for getting that disseminated to all of your employees, and you have ongoing feedback and touch points with it. Again, everything's continuously growing and living. So, and then like it says, deployment and monitoring, you're rolling it out, you're finally ready to go, and you get it out there, and then you keep monitoring it. You make sure it does what it says it does, it continues to work. You're getting feedback from your employees on how their processes work. And I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought because I got a private message. Um, Unfortunately, Sandy had to drop. But you're not just monitoring, does the application does what it says it does? Is it creating the efficiency in the business that it said it would? Is it giving your employees the uplift in their processes that it says it would? Or is it fixing the problems that you thought it would fix in your business? Again, you can't improve what you're not tracking. So you want to track everything that you originally targeted for that technology to meet. Is it meeting? Is it exceeding? Where am I going to go? And what do I need to fix next? So some of the common challenges, those employees, they just like doing it the other way. We're used to doing it the other way. Why do we have to change? Well, it's going to save us so much money and you'll be able to get raises at the end of the year. It's important to give people incentives the incentives, but maybe not monetary. Just communicate with them the benefits to the company and to them and everybody in the company. And if possible, it's not always possible, but if possible, involve them in the decision making process, involve them in all of your process mapping. Do those interviews with them so you understand what they're going through in their daily processes and how it's improving with them. And having that feedback mechanism that's maybe anonymous, getting the as open and honest feedback from them as you can. So then there's integration complexity. Maybe you really shot the moon on this one. You really wanted to solve all of your business challenges and it was just too much. So you have to make sure that you're taking into account how different technologies may interact with each other. Things may go wrong. You may have to break down a process again and find a different way around it, or add additional technology to solve whatever problem it wasn't solving. And then, of course, there's budget constraints. Not all of us have, Bezos money to work with to try to automate every part of our business. So we really have to prioritize what's critical to the business to bring back some of that investment so that we can continue to work on new improvements. And of course, with any technology, you always want to make sure that you're taking care of data security and privacy. We didn't talk a whole lot about this on this particular session because we have a whole session on security. And I really hope that you'll all attend that session because it is really critical for any business, nonprofit, personal as well. I give classes on this for individuals as well. At the Ocean Park Library at the end of the month, the last Thursday of the month, there will be free technology classes there. Not you're not getting takeaways and in-depth information like these classes, that's for sure. They're only about an hour long and they're just kind of presentations for the local community. But the class that we're going to have on security here will give you insight into what tools you can use and how to make sure that you have the right policies in place to protect your company, because cyber threats are real. Ransomware is becoming more and more popular. We had a major hospital network taken down temporarily, unable to fill prescriptions, unable to sort of communicate customer information. They had to go back to paper for a while because they were attacked and even paid the ransom and still had experienced a severe amount of downtime. So with any system, big, small, you always want to make sure that you're looking at every aspect of security. And then, we talked about ongoing measurement, right? We want to know what are those key performance indicators that our investment was worth it? Did we get our ROI? Did we get the return on the investment that we thought we would get from implementing that tool, whether it was time savings, whether it was cost savings and efficiency, whether it was additional sales, whatever your expected ROI on that was. Are you measuring it? Did you achieve it? And then we talked about those employees. How well did they adapt to this change? Did it take them a long time? Were there a lot of complaints? Were there call offs because of it? Were we unable to keep the business going during those days when those employees were working on training? Were we able to reduce our downtime? Monitoring any system downtime that we were having previously? How well were we able to bring efficiency to our processes? And this goes back to that process mapping and assessing the communication platform, financial platform, all of those metrics that you grab, those beefy data points that we love to have. Use those to assess how the technology was able to streamline your business. Did it meet those process improvements that you thought it would. And you always want to be capturing customer satisfaction in some way. The very common way is, would you recommend us on a scale of 1 to 5 to your family? Like people use that very commonly. But you want some kind of mechanism to understand if your business improvements are reflecting in your customer's experience. Because at the end of the day, that's the goal of your business is the customers. So if they're not still happy, you could have the most efficient, effective process that's cost effective and working well, but your customers hate it and they won't come to your business anymore. And guess what? No more business. So measuring that customer satisfaction ongoing is critical for every business. Now you might be thinking, all right, what do I do with all this? Now I have my Microsoft platform. I'm using QuickBooks for my finances. I've got some people on my team that use Adobe. How do I keep track of all this? The first part is you have to keep track of this. You have a technology stack for your business, whether you think it or not, and it needs to be managed because it has important dates. So I've given you a little starter template, and this is really the basics of the basics of tracking your technology. And it's just to give you a bit of a foothold into doing it. When I worked for Highland, I had dedicated software suites for managing all of the software that was licensed for the company, who it was assigned to, what we could or could not do with it from a licensing perspective, and how we renewed it, and how to plan for those expenditures ongoing. Millions of dollars every year is spent in companies on technology. So there are wonderful IT asset management, IT procurement platforms that manage it. But for most of you, you'll be able to work with simple spreadsheet solutions in order to keep things tracked. And you're going to want to track at least these basics. What I've done here is created a unique identifier of some type. And the reason I call these contracts is because every time you're signing up for a subscription or a SaaS service, buying a licensed piece of software, even buying a computer, you're technically agreeing to a contract. There are terms and conditions around your purchase. There are license rights and restrictions around how you can and cannot use that product. There is a cost associated with it usually. There is either a renewal of subscription or a renewal of ongoing support and maintenance. So there's all these aspects that go into what is a sort of technology contract. And here, who the vendor was, and we talked about that vendor not always being the manufacturer, but what the application name is, what its functionality is, here, what its license type is. And I have a different option here. You're not going to run into a whole lot of other options in your world other than subscription or perpetually based licenses. A perpetual license means you pay one time upfront to get the rights to use that license forever in its existing state. So keep that in mind. You might be buying QuickBooks for Windows and you still have to pay a maintenance cost in order to upgrade it to version 10 next year when it comes out. So it's a perpetual license. You can use version 9 as long as you want. But guess what? It's going to slowly become uncompatible, insecure, and not work with your other products. So you have to keep paying that maintenance in order to keep it up. So you want to track, is it an ongoing cost like a subscription, or maybe it's something that's an ongoing cost because you pay at random times. You buy Adobe stock images, for instance, and you buy a number of credits at a time. And it's not really a subscription because you can use your credits up and not buy any more if you want. But every quarter you buy some more credits so that you can use some more stock photos. Now with AI, it's becoming less and less applicable to buy stock photos, but they're working more and more having to buy credits for your AI images too. So there's that. And then I have another tab here that's licenses. And you'll see that I have similar products that I had in the application name here, but they're a little different because they're the specific products that are being installed. Now they're associated with those contract numbers because with my Microsoft 365 subscription, I have 2 users. So I only pay the subscription cost one time a year for those 2 users, but they have different types of subscriptions. One of them may have a full license versus just a reduced or basic license. If they're using the Adobe suite, maybe they bought perpetual licenses for older products and someone else is using a subscription product. In order to know when you come to this contract renewal date, should I renew? Do I have to make changes? What happens with this when this expires? You have to know what's in your contract, who it's assigned to, how they get access to it, and really kind of a lot more information. Is it important to them? What function does it fill in their business? You can fill out this technology tracking however you need it to meet your needs. You can build it out with a calendar of when those expenditures hit so you have a financial budget for your technology expenditures, which is something that I did so many times in my career as an IT procurement analyst. But this is just a very basic kind of tiptoe into what it takes to manage and track your software. And I'll show you just briefly one of the suites that is utilized for large corporations to track um, their products is called ServiceNow. And this platform itself has all of these different feature capabilities and benefits, but it's not really talking about, yeah, here we go. So we have our IT services, we have our customer service management. There's all these different integrations, but all of these are just for running your business, the back part of your business. None of this is actually my HR software. This isn't actually my HR platform. This isn't actually my security platform. I need other tools to meet all these needs. It's just bringing in the data and connecting them. But this alone is a huge mammoth application. So keeping it simple, if you can, is great. But keep in mind that as your business grows, you will have to grow with it and build out as robust tracking as you can to understand where all your technology is used throughout your organization. What we talked about at the very, very beginning of my life in IT asset management, where shadow IT is permeating the industry, it's because, Emily in marketing doesn't want to have to ask for approval from IT and doesn't want to have to ask for budget approval from finance to just buy this Adobe license that she wants to use. But at the end of the day, it's your company's asset if your company is paying for it. She doesn't own that subscription. You do. You're liable for its renewal. You're liable for what she does with that subscription. And that's where reading those terms and conditions and making sure that those are acceptable for your business as well are important too. And having a policy in place that says Emily in marketing can't just go buy whatever she wants. Emily has to fill out this form and request it so that we can confirm we don't have another platform that already does it. We have the budget to cover it. We have someone who can help support her and deploy it within our organization and connect it to the other systems it needs to be connected to. And we legally are able to buy that product because of how she's going to use it. So this is just to help you get that started, to get that frame of mind that you are the technology hub of your business, or you need someone to be the technology hub of your business, because there are still systems that we didn't talk about. That's right. We didn't talk about customer relations management systems. There was a little bit of it incorporated into our financial system, but these systems can be very easy and light, like MailChimp or Constant Contact, or they can be the total chassis to your business, like something like Salesforce, where it's integrated into every motion that your people are doing in every day. So we have another class coming up that's going to cover these applications: customer relations management, HR. Whether you have one employee or 50, you have to manage those employees with some kind of software, and a spreadsheet doesn't always cut it. So there are so many different platforms for managing people. It's kind of insane. And there's different aspects to HR applications, like training, like incorporating continuous growth and advancement. There's so many different aspects that are kind of under that HR umbrella that it warranted being separated. But we've kind of put these three together because they're about managing different specific aspects of the business. And inventory management is the third spoke of that we'll go over, because obviously all of these things, all of your business processes are integrated, and all of these platforms will connect with your communications platform and your financial platform, but they're doing much more specific tasks. And some companies don't have to worry about HR because I'm my own and only employee. I don't have to worry about inventory because I don't have any inventory. I only provide services. But because I provide services, I have other software that I want to manage my service time, and that's specific to my needs. And that's why we're also going to talk about industry specific applications, task specific applications, and platforms that can be transformative to your business and integrate and bring more value to the other platforms that you've already implemented as well. So with that, do we have any more questions before we wrap up for today? No one else has any other questions? All right. Well, hopefully that means that I have given you so much confidence and information that you don't feel like you need to ask me anything. But don't worry, if anything comes to mind, you're welcome to email me directly at lynn@themodemlisa.com. I'm happy to answer your questions and help you find what's right for your business. I do, is having a website necessity these days? Nice. Check out what our next course is on March 27th, so just 2 weeks. We're going to talk about establishing a digital presence. And one of the questions is, do you need a website for your business? Now, my quick answer to that is yes, you need something. You need some landing page of types. It doesn't necessarily need to be a complex website. It could be a Facebook page. It could be a page on another platform. If it's easy to direct your customers to, if it's somewhere that they can still see it, maybe you just need a Google business listing so that on Google Maps, people can find your business. But I will say at its core, every business needs some kind of online presence, and a website is at least some way to have a consistently maintained presence that isn't affected by changes to the platform, isn't only accessible to people within the platform. So when you talk about Facebook, Instagram, any of the social media platforms, you're missing out on anybody that doesn't use those specific platforms. And there are people that only use Instagram, only use Facebook, only use TikTok, only use YouTube. There's people that are really siloed. There's people that use them all. There's people that use very niche ones like Alignable or Nextdoor. There's social media platforms that are, very niche or small. Um, so having a website is kind of like the landing page that you can bring that all to, but you have to have a purpose. What are you trying to get out of the website? What are you trying to get out of the social media? What are you getting from the digital presence? Are you bringing customers to a physical location? Are you having them order something online? Are you having them sign up for something like a class online? So it can be different based on your type of business, but some kind of, even if it's just your static business card-esque kind of website, I would recommend everyone at least have that. And that you can have for very low cost, and maintain it yourself without a whole lot of heartache. And that's what we'll be talking about on March 27th. So I actually ended early because we didn't have as many questions as I thought. I am really surprised. Oh, great, Rebecca. I'll be excited to have you there. Um, does anybody else want to come off camera? I will go ahead and stop the recording at this point.